Good afternoon. Starting off with a disclaimer, I am not a financial advisor. Nothing in this video is financial advice or a recommendation to buy or sell any financial product. All content is for informational purposes only, based on personal opinions and experiences. Trading futures, options, and other financial instruments involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for every investor. You can lose more than your initial investment, so always do your own research and consult with a licensed financial professional. So getting right into it, no trades today, but there's just one thing I wanted to go through. And so I thought I'd do it on the video. So I did take a couple of swings at trades. There were some valid setups, or at least one clean, valid setup that I tried to get on, but I just didn't get filled. And I think I can pinpoint why I didn't get filled on it. And so I'm just going to go through that. So you pretty much had a gap and go scenario like I had talked about in my plans. Gap and go is always a possibility when you're opening in a gap, and it's basically you open in a gap, you give basically no attempt to close the gap, and you just continue. You continue in the direction that you have been moving in. And so in this case, we opened in a gap higher. We had a very quick, brief test lower, not even, maybe 10 ticks, probably not even. And then you continued higher, and now you have sort of this P profile shape into the end of the day. There's about 35 minutes, 40 minutes until CL is closed. And so, like I said, you had a nice break, a nice impulse away from this micro composite value area, which is what I wanted to see. Or else I said in my morning video, if you stayed in here too long, you could have gotten stuck and gone sideways, basically. And so it was clean. It was very clean, very clear based off my plans, at least. But yeah, so basically that's what you got. You got the quick check lower, followed by an impulsive move higher. So we had an impulsive move higher. We broke overnight high quickly, which was important for me. That indicates, that's a strong indication of a gap and go. If you break overnight high and you're staying above it. And so yeah, you continued. You made IB high. This was a local double high. See how the two bars. So it's not a double TPO high, but on the PNF you double touch, which still, to a lesser degree, shows the same thing. It shows that there's still interest up there, basically. And so I sat through pretty much all this chop, but I was waiting for this test of RTH VWAP, which is this orange line here. And so I was patient enough. You didn't exactly get there here, and I sat through all this and, didn't get antsy, I guess. Didn't feel like I wanted to get in or feel like, the FOMO feeling. But then you finally broke. You got a nice zipper right at RTH VWAP, and you broke it to the high side. So for me, that push higher, that was my indication to get on. And so I think at the time I put my order at 11. 59.11, like right at RTH VWAP, which was the mistake. Or at least not a mistake, or yeah, I'd say a mistake, but it could have been executed better. Let's just say that. The reason being, when you're in a very clear directional bias, the market is very less forgiving, I find at least. The market is very less forgiving in giving you multiple attempts to get on one kind of idea, right? And so you got the zipper break, you got a very small, tight retracement here to these two red bars, which is where you ideally would have wanted to get on. So you would have wanted to get on, I think these lows were 15, and your stop was 07. So if that was the case, 15 to 07, what's that, an 8 tick stop? So it would have still been tight. But I wanted 11. I wanted the best price. And so I was sort of being a dig for a tick kind of thing, if you've ever heard that saying, where I was too conservative with my entry and I wanted, like, basically the bottom, which you're not going to get in a very directional environment like this. Like, you see, like, I was looking at overnight high for this point. Like, look how shallow this pullback is. You extend, you come back, all you do is touch overnight, and then you bounce, and you continue. And so in very directional markets like this, when there's a clear direction, at least this morning, we sort of balanced out into the afternoon. But at least in the morning, we were very directional. Be a little more open. This is just for me, basically. This is advice for myself. Be a little more open to, not needing the best price. Because, like, I could have gotten in at 15 here and still had 3 ticks. My stop 3 ticks below here. My normal exit strategy, I use 11. I use 11 ticks right now. And so if I got in at 15, my stop would have been 04. So I would have had 3 tick buffer from this low, which is more than enough because all you really need is to have your stop below RTH VWAP. That's what you're expecting to hold. That's the actual like structural lean you're using. You're just using the price action to get on. And so I think I was a bit greedy with my entry here, and I think one, it was, well, we haven't necessarily been in a super directional bias recently, so it's not like this has been the common environment. But I think also because this is the second week, the second week of life, I think I still to a degree feel, like I want to be right. I don't want to take a full stop. And so I want a better price to give myself the best chance of, getting risk off, getting targets, and not getting stopped. And so it's a more conservative mindset. It's risk averse, right? Where like I should have been perfectly willing and perfectly, fine with entering at 15 when we came back down here, the next bar, and my stop would have been right here, right down there. And it would have been perfect. Look, I would have got full target almost instantly. Like in this case, I didn't know this was going to happen, but it worked out well. Like basically it was right at 10 a.m. And so the idea was for the IB break, for us to continue higher, push higher, and get the IB break. Yeah, see 950, and then we're up here by 10. And so that's just some advice for myself, I guess. Like, if the trade sets up, especially as cleanly as this, like aside from this chop here, this is a really clean trade for me. It was really clean. It was really clear, and so be willing to actually take risk, right? Because you have to, right? You're not gonna pick the bottom every time. Sometimes you will, but really you're just getting lucky, right? No one can consistently pick the bottom or the top of a trade. It's just not possible because the market is random, right? And so so I will show you the video because I put my order like here, and I thought maybe on this bar it would break and I would get filled quickly and then we could turn around, but I didn't get it. And after that, like there were a couple things that set up, but missing that trade, it annoyed me, and so then I wasn't really able to get into a high level of focus for the rest of the morning session. And so that's more just advice for myself. Like, so in very directional days, you usually have to give yourself a little more, and the market is usually a bit less forgiving in terms of giving you multiple attempts to get on, right? You're usually going to get one attempt, in this case, it still gave you 2 red bars. But like just be aware of that indirectional, give yourself a little more. And like, I mean, really, I'm not even giving myself a little more because my stop is still below here. It would have been fine. Again, I think it was just partly the information, partly psychological, in the sense where I wanted the bottom, I wanted the best price. I wanted to risk as little as possible, which is not the right mindset to have. I have my stop set. I have an 8-tick stop, I have an 11-tick stop, and I have, I think, a 15-tick stop, depending on the trade idea. And so, give it. Like, you're giving yourself that room. That's your margin of error, pretty much, And so, actually give it, right? Like, if I got a 3-tick buffer from that low, that's good, Because, like, technically, even if you put your stop right at this low, right at 07, that's valid. You're allowed to do that, and if that gets touched again, you're likely wrong. And so maybe just, think about it like that. Think about, where actually am I wrong? Okay, right here, give myself 2 ticks, give myself a 2-tick buffer. and then, okay, see the difference. Where's my entry, you know? If it's an 11 tick exit strategy, well then from 05, I'm 11 ticks up, right? Which would be 16 or whatever. 16 or 17 or, yeah, 16. And so 16, oh, what do you know? Right there. And I would have got the bottom, you know? So, yeah, that's just some advice for myself. I'll quickly show the video. It's not that great. Like, it's just this zipper happening, and then you get the break, and then I put my order down here and don't get filled, but I'll show it just for the sake of it. So 1 second. Okay, so here is about where the zipper is about to form. The zipper's forming, and I'm already looking, like, basically the idea and everything is already set. All I'm looking for is a price action setup for me to get on. And so, boom. I'm looking, I'm watching. Look, that's me looking for my entry price. And then, boom, you get the zipper break. And so, I think pretty much right after I put my entry. That's my cue to get on, and so I put my order. But, obviously, not a great order placement, and you do continue higher. I think I do maybe move it up a tick, but yeah, like even the high of the zipper, you know, like anywhere, really you just gotta watch, right? And be aware that in this environment, it's likely gonna be more shallow of a pullback, right, on this zipper break because we're more bullish. Yeah, so you see I move it up 1 tick, but it's 1 tick. And look how much buffer I'm giving myself. This is where I'm actually wrong, and this is where my stop is. So, like, sure, it's nice if you can have that big of a buffer, but you don't need it, right? And so, yeah, we get the next 2 red bars. I don't get filled. I left it, and then once we extended higher, I got rid of it. And so, that's pretty much it. That was the only attempt really I had today. But I thought, you know, that may be valuable for some people because I could have gotten on that trade, but, you know, to a degree, some of the context-wise, I was a little bit off in terms of us being very directional, and so the pullbacks are likely going to be shallower to the short side. And on top of, you know, me being a bit too risk averse, you know, it being my second week of live trading since the last June of 2024, and, you know, me, I guess, maybe not wanting to take full stops, basically. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'll end it here, and we will be back for planning tomorrow morning. Tomorrow we'll see how it goes. I think we do have FOMC tomorrow at whatever 1 or 2 or whatever time it's normally at. And so yeah, we could have a good day tomorrow, and yeah, I'll be focusing on tomorrow. I'm gonna put most of my focus on my entry and make sure, you know, just like I said before, look at where you're wrong. Let's say give myself 1 to 2 ticks of buffer, and then just whatever the difference is from the stop I'm willing to allocate, the 8 ticks, the 11 ticks, the 15 ticks, just put your entry there. Give yourself two ticks, maybe max 3 ticks, you know, because I want to be okay and willing to take some heat and take risk, because that's the reason you have the full stop, you know. That's the reason, right? Like, you're assuming you're not going to pick the bottom, and so you give yourself a stop range from where you got on to let your idea be tested with a degree of a margin of error, or a margin of you didn't pick the bottom, right? So yeah, so I'll end it here. I'll upload this, and I will be back tomorrow morning.